Welcome to the Pure Light Project podcast. My name is Andrea Mai, and today I am hanging out with one of my nearest and dearest friends and fellow journeyers on the ascension path. And I'm so excited. We've talked about this a few times, and Erik had mentioned a video by Carrie Kay, and I went and watched it, and I just thought, what a great subject for us to come in and talk about. Erik and I have no trouble having very long conversations. And so we're going to do really well to keep this around 45 minutes to an hour, but hopefully it will be just really on point with what we want to talk about today. But Erik, thank you for coming on, and happy holidays. It looks like,
yeah, it's it gets earlier every year. I don't know. I feel like the new norm for Christmas decorations is, I guess, like, just after the middle of November. I mean, because I thought, well, we should wait, and then I realized that all of the events that we have around here, like, Gaylord Opryland, all of their stuff started this. I think it was this past weekend, and the Dancing Lights of Christmas was this past weekend, and Zulumination is this weekend, and my little one is just like, hey, it's time to put these up, and so tis the season, right?
I love it. We're heading out of town for the for Thanksgiving, so probably ours won't go up until after. But yeah, Erik and I met. Is it 2 years or 3 years ago? I was trying to remember.
So I only remember now because it was solstice, and it was 2021. So while it seems, I mean, time,
Yeah, we've packed in about 15 years. Yeah, we met at an event in Florida, not knowing each other, both from Tennessee, and we didn't find this out until after the event. You came to, I was doing healing sessions at this event, and you came over not knowing really why you were coming to me, but and here we are today.
Yeah, I tell you, that is a pretty interesting story. It's one of those just, one of those divine, not that they all aren't sort of divinely guided, but, as you sort of tap more into that, inner knowing that you have. I mean, I was really working on those kind of practices. So as I went up to this, it was what I would call a menu of healer options is what they had at this event. It was actually really cool. But I walked up and I thought, well, how do I know what I really want? The only thing that I knew that I wanted to get some sort of a massage that day, because I wanted to treat myself. And so they did have someone there it wasn't necessarily just a massage, but that's basically what it was. The way I saw it, was definitely very relaxing and sort of kind of treat your body. But I knew I was going to do two, whatever that was for. I'm like, okay, I'm going to see two people. And so you were just, I mean, it was like I was just attracted right to it. And it's like, okay, well, this is the person that I'm going to go see. And yeah, you put me on that, what I call the floating table. Because, man,
I had the chair at the time. Yeah, like
it's a chair, but it's like I'm like laying out, like a table guy. That was quite the experience. Yeah, and then we had talked, but had no idea. And not only did you not like just live in Tennessee, but you literally live like 15 minutes from me. And I was like, wait a minute, what? You're in Nashville, really? And it's like, yeah, and yeah, that's how it all started. It's just one of those things where it was like,
yeah, and you meet a lot of people, but I think for both of us, like for me, it was totally just like really quick kinship, right? And it was very like, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure you're the reason I went to Florida.
Yes.
Couldn't
Yeah, and
find it in my own town till
well, I mean, it's really interesting because I think speaking of time and how I do think that there can be you get enough time past it, past an event like that where there is a lot of connection and stuff like that going on, and you might think that there's one reason or another, but I mean, just like you was completely convinced that really ultimately the only reason that I went to that event was for some reason we both had to travel, and not that there weren't other connections and things to be made, but ultimately I literally traveled all that way. I traveled however many miles that is, plane flights, the whole 9 yards, to go meet someone that lives 15 minutes across the way.
I love it. It was so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so um we've spent a lot of time the last couple of years. It'll be 2 years next month, I think. It was the
Yeah.
solstice, right? So,
Hmm.
um, we spent a whole lot of time hanging out, doing different things together, and really watching each other expand and grow and go through a lot of times very parallel experiences and also, like, completely unique. Um, and
Yeah.
it's been so fantastic to have somebody who was dialed into different areas, um, of spirituality and at a different stage than I was at, and to really go through this. We have sort of this other person who doesn't live here who I met through Eric. It feels like sometimes we're this triangle or this
Hmm.
tripod, and it's so interesting to me. But you want to give people a little bit of a just a synopsis of your path, what, like, how did you come into this whole world of ascension and expansion and new earth, and, like, that was so far from your reality. How did it happen
Hmm.
for you?
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes it still is. I mean, because I'm living it. It's my story, right? But it's sometimes still just kind of mind blowing when, for instance, you ask this question and it's like, there's so much information, right? It's like there's so much to it. I think probably the simplest way to do this would just kind of go back, and it's really the best way I can sort of track it is to kind of literally go back in time and like, well, where was I in like,
I was gonna
you know,
say, if you just when you come in closer to your sound gets just a wee bit distorted,
oh,
so
okay, I'll stay here then. Yeah. Okay.
just like just a little just lean back. It
Yeah.
seems to be better.
Yeah, that's interesting. It just probably has something to do with the Bluetooth or something like that.
Yeah,
Okay. So I'll go back to where I was
okay.
at a second ago. Um, so it's easier for me to track it back in time a little bit. So I'll take it back to, let's say, where was I in like 2010? Because I do think looking at this 2010 to 2012 time frame window was really important for a lot of those that had ended up on this path, at least at this particular point in time. And I remember right around 2010, and mind you, I've worked in the music business was my goal to be involved in the music business in one way or the other, and specifically in rock music and being involved in promotion of artists and management of bands and development of artists, not necessarily in that order, but these were all things that I was so passionate about in my life. So it was very much my existence was completely tied into what I did. That was what I identified as. So then if you would have asked me, I was probably less of Eric and I was more of um, a manager or an arts development guy, or I was more of, or a promoter of some sort. That's really more of what I was. And around this time, I was getting really interested in UFOs. I had probably always been slightly interested in like paranormal kind of stuff. but this was a different type of interest because I think the paranormal stuff that I was always used to uh, when I was younger would have been more kind of scary paranormal stuff. And that may have been programming from movies or whatever it is that I picked up along the way. But this was more of, understanding things about maybe more multiple dimensions and that there being other beings, maybe things that we couldn't necessarily see. And of course, the traditional UFOs and getting more interested in like astral travel and like just getting more, I was getting more information about things that uh, were sort of occult, if you would put it that way, right? That were just outside of necessarily the mainstream normal. And I got really, I saw a few things on YouTube, and a lot of these things were about alien contactees, right?
Mhm.
And people who were essentially channeling other beings. And at this time, though, there still was a lot more of, I don't necessarily if I want to call it doom and gloom, but it was a little bit more of the very contrasted light and dark type stuff. So there was a lot of talk about reptilians and and grays and aliens that may not necessarily have our good in mind, right? Then on the other
Right.
hand, there was this really like love and light, airy fairy sort of world, which I felt a lot less connected to, but I was still really interested in it. So um, I found a psychic that I was really, really drawn to. And for about 3 years before he passed, I got to be really close with him. His name was Sean Jackson. And Sean really helped bring me along kind of it helped sort of like wake me up, I think, into this new version of like who I was becoming. Now, mind you, I had a very, very long battle with drugs and alcohol. Um, and during this time, he watched me relapse several times. So I would get on the straight and narrow and I would be really focused moving forward, very involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, so on and so forth. And I would really start to kind of get on a path and then I would just fall off of that path. Um, and so it's interesting because I really see this progression of the person I have become today really did start all the way back then. And I cannot trace it any earlier because any earlier than that is like none of those things really came into play. It was really right about 2010. And it's interesting because although it was very, very subtle and a little bit at a time, I only did gain more and more interest and more and more interest. And I always found myself in this yo-yo pattern, I will just call it now, um, where I would start to really move forward and then I would somehow fall back into some pattern. And I mean, I've been sober for almost 10 years now. So at some point in time, I actually did put down alcohol. But I did, take prescription medications for a really long time. And I sort of leaned on some of those as a crutch. And there were other things, I was very, very, very deep addiction to pornography, other things, which was its own sort of drug, which I think probably held me back from, maybe more growth that I could have had. I think you and I probably both know it's exactly how it was supposed to be in order to get me to this point. But
Exactly.
but it was definitely this like incremental movement towards, I want to call it towards a much bigger choice point. And I'm able to identify that much bigger choice point as coming into in the year 2020. So, and I always remember it because 2020 was a big election year, and I got really into the whole Q movement, the whole where we go one, we go all kind of keyboard warrior. I mean, at this time, this is a big awakening, though. Many people will call it the Great Awakening, right? Or we came into more information about these things, honestly, that I had gotten really interested in starting in 2010, which is like, things like the cabal. And again, these are all these darker kind of underbelly of like what's going on. But I had a pretty good understanding, and maybe even more of like an inner standing of like, hey, a lot of these things are real, maybe not all of them, but if you use your own discernment, there's a lot of these things that are real. And I got into kind of this activist sort of part where it was like, I'm going to do something to make the world better, so
Right.
I'm
Right.
really spreading a lot of these messages. There's a guy that actually lives here in Nashville. His name is Nick Alvear, and Nick is one of these just incredible filmmakers who was I don't know if you've seen them, but he made all the Purdywood videos. So he highlighted all of these big um, uh, Hollywood actors and actresses. And part of it was just some movement, but he also did some stuff on some presidential, some presidents and things like that, where he highlights like who are these people and what are they really doing. And it was bringing to light some real stuff that there was a portion of the population that was ready to see. And I was one of those
Yeah.
people. But I
Yeah,
also
and
at
that
that time,
it it's so interesting to me because so that's um a part of this whole thing that's happening across the world that I was not part of, right? Really, like, I mean, I heard bits and pieces. You can't be in these communities and not hear about a lot of these things. They weren't part of my path, but like I've always said there's many ways to, like everybody's going to come to whatever that moment in time is that they start to understand the broader scope of what they are of and it was actually quite interesting to me how I never expected that whole season of like 2019, 2020 to serve as the launch pad that it did, the accelerator, right? I mean, it was just like, I mean, I'm 51 now. Like I've been through lots of elections, seen lots of nonsense, right? Every 4 years, boom, it's like crazy making, and it's only accelerated, um but it never had that effect. And so that was like my entree into understanding that we were entering into this whole time of that was beyond my personal path. It was this was going to be something far greater. And so anyways, so
well, yeah, I mean, and I think, and I want to fast forward in a little bit of this now, because I talked about this choice point, which it brought me to, and I I'll say something else here. This was all necessary, and this is what you were pointing to, is all of these things were necessary for me. This was literally what I would call a
Mhm.
great awakening for me. Um, there are still people that are becoming aware of it. I think that there was like at this tipping point in time where a lot of people were becoming aware of it, and there were people who could see it and those that couldn't see it. And I will say this for anybody that does watch this, that might have this question or thought about, well, I've seen these things too, and I woke up around this, but maybe I have family members or something that I've tried to show it to, because I don't want to say made the mistake, but I sent these kind of things to a lot of people, some of which I don't talk to anymore because they thought I was crazy, right? And
Right.
that's totally fine, because we are all truly on the path that we are supposed to be on. Not everyone is supposed to see this. I think a lot of people think they are. And that being said, my choice point was one that was actually more subtle than I would have thought, because this also starts to come in and beg the question. A lot of us see this stream of reality time that we were born. I was born in 1979 and I die in, I don't know, 2065 or whatever that is. And everything is straight. And there's this one lifetime, and, religion, I think, was what kind of makes up this backbone of this reality, says, after this lifetime, I go to heaven, right? And depending upon what religious doctrine you look at, or maybe your more Eastern religion philosophy, you think you have many lifetimes, but even in that, they're each one right after the other. And, I became aware, um, somehow, that like I was being afforded this opportunity. I started to understand that there were these things that we would just call timelines, right? That there were all of these different versions of me. Because another thing I had gotten really interested in from a scientific perspective was understanding that there was this quantum reality, right? Studying Tesla, getting really into all of these things that had been, again, suppressed. Um, you start looking at, well, why don't we have free energy? And you go down the rabbit hole, and a lot of these things are still out there for you to see. And it's like, wow, there are literally all of these timelines, and there are all of these different versions of us that are actually, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, accessible to us through different types of meditation, so on and so forth. And I realized that I was being given a choice that I got in my head about for a little while, because this choice was like, hey, you're in this, there's a lot of different parts of the head that are involved here. One being the ego, which is like, oh man, you're being given a choice to become this greater version of you. And it was very kind of egoic, and I was back and forth, like trying to figure out what all this was. And I finally kind of surrendered into being in what I've come to now know as the now, which isn't necessarily it isn't an exact pinpoint of time. It's always moving, but it's in this now reality in which this is the version I'm supposed to be in, because this is where my divinity has me at. Otherwise, I'd be at a different point. And in understanding that, this decision was, and it almost wasn't even a decision. I was kind of propelled into it, but it was a decision in the fact that I had to start doing things to take care of my energy field. I had to start doing things to take better care of my body. I had to start doing practices that would help me come into my body, because one thing I didn't understand, I was just started getting this limited understanding of, was that I've always been very hyperactive, very, I mean, ADHD to the maximum extreme. And
Yeah,
um,
the
I,
Eric I met 2 years ago and who you are today, like, every 6 months, there's this, like it's like almost like a halving, right? It's like cut in half, the speed, the sort of neurotic, chaotic. It's like it's been so interesting and really cool to watch you come in, and now, like, even recently like this, whew, this peacefulness that has been my joy to see for
mm,
you, so not that there was anything wrong with the other, but to see you
no,
experience it, I think probably for the first time naturally is
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. I mean, and that's where this is, this is going, is that and in talking about this, our friend Kristen, who at the time, she was I called her my ascension buddy. I mean, it's just, and that's I mean, you were talking about wild stories. I mean, when I've met her in Phoenix in 2003, we dated for a little while. She's about 8 years older than me. She was she was the head of the investigative reporting unit at ABC 15 in Phoenix, and I was this kid that worked at this coffee shop and was, I mean, we're literally different lifetimes, right, compared to now. And then I'd always stayed in touch with her, and Kristen has her own, path, which is, I mean, spectacular. I don't even, I couldn't even encapsulate a word, but we'll say spectacular. She was the one who really led me into and through all of these processes. So she has held my hand through all of the detoxification of the body, right? Walking me through
Mm,
all of the protocols, and doing all of this with me by interfacing. I don't even know the word. We've joked sometimes and called her an oracle, right? But like, um, with her practice of what we would term star magic, right? And other things where she is tapping into different dimensional parts of who I am, my higher self, things that I hadn't gotten the access to yet, right?
right,
Having that access, she was able to basically interface or communicate with that part of me, and would then allow me to find out what are the best things for my body to use to detox. So doing all of the different you know organ cleanses, so all the different parts of the body, cleansing all of those things
yeah,
out. And again, these are like one at a time, because when you've never done these cleanses before, when she and I first started, I weighed like 220 pounds. I'm 175-ish right now. And these things are like, they can be super intense. So it was like, how are we going to go through and do? And I had to make a decision on a very physical level to, you know, stop eating sugar. It's like I eat some now, but it's like going through these cleanses is like, dude, I mean, I was sitting here at night and I was eating, I mean, people would be like, you're doing what? But I would have like, I don't know, a whole box of the packaged Rice Krispie treats that you would buy at the store.
I
Sometimes I would have
never look at a Rice Krispie bar the same after making
I mean, like, but this is normal to me. I couldn't have imagined not eating after like 9 or 10 p.m. because I basically stuffed myself to go to sleep. That was besides all the medications I used, that was another
Yeah.
thing I used, you know, to
Yeah.
coping mechanism of life. And so I had to make these decisions to not only do that, but to continue doing these sessions with Kristen. And there was a while where I went through, you know, you were right with me through this whole time of like, me you know, wanting to have more experiences in meditation and whatever, and having to go through my own process of doing all these courses and all these different things with all of these different people and practitioners,
Yeah.
looking for something that I ultimately came to find I didn't need. But I think that each one of those processes were necessary for me to go through, because it then led me to whatever that, you know, whatever these next stair steps were moving forward.
Sure.
You know, into, you know, ultimately finding, you know, things like Jason Estes and
Mhm.
TBO, and, you know, people like Franco De Nicola and Carrie Kay, who really helped bring into me, again, I think this is my divinity, of course, helping me kind of interface and find what parts of reality are for me, that I had just made these decisions to, almost what you might want to say, quantum jump into a different reality than
Yeah.
the one that because I fully believe that when I came here onto this planet, my experience this time was, and again, this is this time, I have come into a realization that I have been, I don't know, maybe hundreds of thousands of things, or more, millions of things. I've experienced all of the different things. But this particular time was to focus. This was supposed to be a very third density, 3D body. Um, uh, you know, there was not anything multi-dimensional per se about this
Right.
experience this time around. It was going to be very, very linear, right, from birth to death.
Yeah.
But we've gone through so many changes on the planet. I don't know that this time was actually fully seen. Again, you know, not even fully understanding really how time does work, right?
Sure, sure. You know,
You know,
what
getting
there are some who have, I think, a cl more clear understanding of what it is beyond the fact that we can recognize it's a construct, an agreement that we've put in place, and, I know I've had experiences of timelessness and being outside of time, and, like, it's been a real beautiful sort of reflection point for me for years and years and years, but, um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, all of that said, it just kind of brings me to this point now of like doing each one of these things a little bit at a time. And mind you, there is, you know, there's a lot of stuff that just isn't included in here because it doesn't need to be. But a lot of these are like
yeah,
massive, massive growing experiences, things that I've gone through
yeah,
in my life that, quite honestly, were really painful. I mean, you have witnessed me, I mean, come into, I'd say, the truest version of myself I've ever been, and a lot of that is, there is a lot of vulnerability and crying, and you witnessed me. You know, we did an event called Money and You earlier this year, which in Dallas, which was incredible, and
yeah,
I went into that event. Literally, I was like losing my identity. I didn't even know who I was anymore, because I was walking through this linear world of being this guy in the music industry with everything, and I still maintain saying this. There is parts of the job I do still love. I mean, I've built, you know, I built some of these things, and I do like kind of, you know, one of the little corners of the world I've made for myself. But I am just so like the person that I was, like, it's so different, that I walked into this being like, I'm still in the world, that world, only because yes, that is where that's how I make my money. So that's literally professionally where everything's at. But there's no desire, like per se, to like really grow that. Like
Yeah.
I'm looking at
Yeah.
other areas because becoming it's come into my awareness that there is something beyond this. And that's actually one of the current things that if I do struggle per se, because even in my calmest of times, there will still be things that come in. And the thing that's come in recently is um, what is next. And
Yeah.
there are times where I get real peaceful with it, and it doesn't matter what's next. And then there are other times when all of a sudden, like seemingly out of nowhere, it is whatever the energies are that are coming up. It's trying to we have just moved into what they're calling space circuits, which is, supposed to be very difficult for men. And it's coming in and it's bringing up everything that isn't true within me. And I
Yeah.
have thought that I have dealt with all of these things, and I've sat with them and I've really felt through them. And all of a sudden, here it comes last night, no, 2 nights ago, where all of a sudden I see this other person is doing this thing that I really feel like that I should have been able to do myself yet. Like it's just this whole experience that's come in and then right in front of me. And it literally, I mean, I didn't fully spin out because I'm not there anymore, but as close as I could come to spinning out in this body, I'm like, you have got to be freaking kidding me. Like, I mean, really disrupted to where like I had to start looking at the thoughts moving through me literally as thoughts because I know that's what they were. And I really had to come to a new realization that all of these thoughts about lack or scarcity, because it's fears and they're related to money or
Yeah.
finance or
Yeah.
or not knowing what's next, not being able to make an actual move. And this just happened to me this afternoon where I was able to see them all again and just see them as a new version of an illusion that I had seen before.
Yeah. This is something that so many in my communities, the circles that I play in, like, uh, so many are going through these massive transitions. The entire year of 2023 has been a complete it went from being a deconstruction to a complete release. I had absolutely no choice but to let go of every identity, a lot of it in the last 2 weeks. It like, the material aspects are still the same, but the identity surrounding them, and I was given a vision over the last few years, like bits and pieces, things I've been creating, books and programs and stuff. Like I had to let everything go on every level that I could possibly witness and experience. And in October, like I really felt like I was about an inch away from death because I energetically felt dead. And I I was like, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing here. If I'm supposed to I'm happy to shift into the next thing, right? That's why this podcast has been on hiatus for months now. Many things in my life have just been either on pause or had to be completely cut loose. This is something that is huge that many are going through this kind of, we talked about the Carrie K video, right? The shifting of roles. When you served in one of those roles, whether it was your professional work or just a role you served in whoever you are with, right? Your little corner of the world. It's like it's a complete letting go of identity because if you don't let go, it's going, it's leaving,
Yeah.
whether you drop it or not. And so you create so much suffering. Um, I had this image of like I'm writing a new book and the image was really of like life is continuing to move in this direction, and if you don't let go, right, you've got the brakes on and you're just like brrr, it's like a cartoon character trying to hold life from going forward
Yeah.
in some direction, in the direction it wants to go through you, that your
Yep.
divinity expressing through you, you know, and you're over here going, no, 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 I don't trust that that is possible, or that's not what I think I want. I'm not comfortable with that because I've never been that. Um, so yeah, this is a huge transformation for many, many in like all over the place in any community, whether you consider yourself part of sort of this light worker, or starseed or awakening communities. Um, Planet Earth, welcome to the community. You're part of it, honey, whether you know it or not,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
On some
absolutely.
on
Yeah.
some level, you can choose otherwise, but
Well, and
anyways,
I think another interesting thing that this is sort of an offshoot about what we're talking about, but I think this is really important because it's just been super important for me to recognize this, is that a lot of us, and this is just human, I think this is part of the current human nature, has been to look at everyone else around us and go, well, here's what's going on around and everywhere else around me. And um, a lot of it is about, I see a lot of people on podcasts and different things, videos, asking the same sort of question, which is, well, why don't I see other people going through even though they're on, in a group with some other people that are going through it, they usually view that, and sometimes it is a much smaller group than what they think that they see on the outside, and what they think they see on the outside going through. And I mean, I can be one of those people too, where it's like I can see um, many people out in the world who aren't really a part of any sort of like ascension community, maybe totally out. Some people might know those words, but there's does really seem to be a much larger community that is not part of it than the ones that are. And I do think, someone like Carrie Kay talks about this pretty extensively, where she talks about the different groups of people. And Jason Estes also talks about it. It's a little bit more in depth when he goes into it, but essentially they're all saying the same thing, which is there really are people here we are not all experiencing the same level of involvement. A lot of times when you hear someone say all of us are going through it, it's all of us who chose out of soul level. And that doesn't mean that whether it's when you were born, or maybe like I believe I did somewhere around probably 2019, 2020, my soul made a decision to move into this path. And you can move into this path, I think, at any time. That's just whenever it is that you move into it. But that
yeah,
not everyone that we see is actually ascending to 5D, as we call it, fifth dimension, 5D, however you want to look at it. Not everyone is going there. There are, Jason talks about this new, if the world would have ascended in 2017, there would have been about 300,000 people. However, we went from 2017 to 2023, and now there's like 7 point some billion people. But we're all experiencing an ascension, but we are not all experiencing the same ascension. I don't know what the numbers are. It doesn't even matter to me. But I'm going to say out of 7.5 billion, probably 6 billion of those are actually moving to, they're also ascending, but it's a different ascension. So there is no descending window and ascending window. We're both
mm,
ascending. It's just to a different version. So there will be
yeah,
no more inverted matrix. They will get, and Franco De Nicola talked about this a lot when he talked about the organic 3D. And the organic 3D is what some of us are saying, the fourth, that this new fourth dimensional world, which is where a lot of these souls are moving to. So you might see some of these people, the ones that I looked at back in 2019, 2020, whatever that time frame was, maybe 2021, and I was going, look at all these sheep, the sheeple right there sleeping, and we need to spread this information to wake them up. Well, they can't see it no matter what, because they're not supposed to.
yeah,
And not all of these people are experiencing the same ascension symptoms that I mean, even though you and I may have different ones, it does seem there's a lot of the same energies that move through that can give us at certain times
yeah,
very similar, or like, even though our experiences might be different, it's the types of energy that's coming in. And so I'll wrap it up just with this. I just wanted to say that I think it's really important that people understand that everyone is exactly where they are supposed to be. It is
yeah,
absolutely perfect where they are, and that not everyone is supposed to be on the 5D ascension path. Some of them are literally going in their own way. So no, when we talk about things, the circuit purge, right? And this is stuff that comes from Jason Estes, as he's talking about all this stuff being cleaned out. I may right now be having everything that is not true within my literal spiritual and physical existence be bubbling up out of me to be released. But that doesn't mean that that's happening for literally everyone. I do think on some level we're all experiencing some levels of it, but
Yeah, and
maybe
it's
not as intense.
really different language, different awareness of, you know, why your lungs feel wheezy, right? We have these different lenses that we come to it. Some people think they've got allergies, some people experience it as bronchitis, some people experience it as detoxing, sadness and grief, or, a buildup of garbage we've taken into our bodies, right? It's there is no right or wrong path. The consciousness goes in the direction that it is going, and that doesn't make it right or wrong, you know? And I think there was in the early days, very much like the early days of 2020, 2021, sort of this, hierarchy, right,
Sure,
of
yeah,
because
yeah,
there were so many people new to the path and who had been on it a very long time, right? And when I say the path, I mean just sort of a path of conscious spiritual exploration, you
yeah,
know, um, spiritual or consciousness awareness. If you don't vibe with the idea of spirituality, right, like that language, but people who were really choosing to explore, um, and we'd get so serious, and I mean, like I've said this before on the podcast, but like I spent a solid 2 years expecting that much of my world would disappear, right? That most of the people I know would be leaving and going through immense grief and having to learn how to let go to those, like, but really I'm so grateful to have had. I believe there was a timeline or many timelines at which point
yes,
that was
definitely.
what was going to happen, because I saw it, I sensed it, I felt that this wasn't just other people's words. I experienced this, and so I'm really grateful now because it's allowed me to really let go of things and attachments to people or places in a way that I might not have been able to otherwise, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I would love, so we've been at this a bit, close to an hour. So I just want to reference back real quick. Um, it's fun because the two of us, we have a few people that we mutually sort of, you know, touch in with or follow or stay connected to these different communities. And, um, you know, Carrie Kay is somebody who I have, I check out like a couple videos a month. A lot of people I check out kind of one or two videos a month. Um, and this one, it was funny that it was the one that we always have these great synchronicities. Right. The one that you pointed out, I'm like, "Oh, yeah." I got to think about it. Let me find it. But she was talking about, here, I'm gonna put up a little on the screen. I'm gonna um, share the video so people can kinda see
Oh
it.
yeah, good
Uh,
idea. It really is it's a fantastic video.
share a file. Dude. Hang on one second. So it's this one, light workers, our roles are changing, but to what? Why do light workers have a new role? And so that video, you might go check it out if this is something that you feel you're going through. But just oops, let me see. Take it off of me. There we go. But and so I texted you this past Sunday and I was like, I just watched it and you said you felt the three of us are anchors when we went to dinner the other last week. And um she talks about basically like anchors,
That
yo-yos or
there's
like
four types. She
bridges.
says there's four types. Yeah, there's four types of, she would call them archetypes, right? Of people
Yeah,
um leading us into the ascension, right? And
yeah.
then yes, they were the anchors, um the front runners, the anchors, the yo-yos, and then there are those essentially that are, you might just
Un
want to say, holding us back per se.
Yeah, and yo-yos or bridges, right? And so I sat through it and I thought I like it was like, "Oh man, like I've served in a lot of these over their last few years." I was kind of chuckling as I watched the video because I've served all 3 roles over the course of my life. While I am innately an anchor, I was a front runner until about 2017. Then I served as a bridge slash yo-yo because I had done well, I said I'd done all the work, done like my work since I was 12 years
Right.
old, right? And like I'm looking forward to the day we stop calling it work, right? But it's the lingo and but front runners are often spiritually anchors. Front runners are often spiritually anchors who have work to do to fully embody. We awaken early and know what true reality is, to the degree to which we made it, but
Right.
yet there are still the layers of releasing that have to happen to physically get there, and for the physical to meet and embody the spiritual self or the spiritual knowing. And I said, and now I feel I finally get to rest as an anchor, for there are enough others doing the other processes, the other work, you know. Um, it's
Yeah.
a really beautiful thing to like my body was like I said, October was baby up until 2 weeks ago. I'm like I literally went into the cave, um,
Yeah.
and just I couldn't come out until I could thrive or even have any energy. And so that's been over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, right? That I've been doing some different things to find and renew myself, um, and feel like, yeah, man, I want to stick around for I want to see what comes next for this adventure, this game, Jason Estes calls it, the infinite game or something,
Infinite. Welcome to the infinite game. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. But so what about, I mean, would you say, you said you feel like an anchor, and does that feel like a new thing for you, or is that
Yeah. I would say that it is. I mean, it's really interesting because, I do believe that I had done enough of the work coming into this new period of time. And, we can be kind of given, um, we can be given these, what do I want to say, these like time frames as to when certain things happen or when they don't happen, like the roles are changing, but it can really be any time around that. And I've noticed that just recently, I think within the past few weeks or so, I've come into this role of really being able to, it's like anchoring and being here while I'm seeing a lot of people go through a lot of really, what I would call, difficult, very difficult experiences. A lot of really heavy ascension symptoms, a lot of, more things coming up, coming up, coming up. And I'm really just able to really just be in this place. And I mean, this place of actually what I would call, like energetic peace, which isn't something that I'd ever really experienced before. And, you were referencing that earlier, um, just about, um, oh, oops, I just realized that
It was just
that's
for,
really
like,
weird.
10 seconds,
Yeah,
you
it
know?
was really weird. My whole screen just went down there. But just realizing that, I was in a place where I've done enough of this work, like supercharged work over the past, I don't know, couple of years, where now I'm sitting in this place where, I'm able to be able to hold this space for all of this other stuff that's going on. And, you were talking about that a little bit ago, where you're like, seeing me come into this space. And so, yeah, it's been quite an experience, and I just kind of feel like I'm here now. While there is stuff that comes up, and things that I have to, I think there'll probably always be things to go through, especially as we're going through these kind of purges of our circuitry systems. But this feels nice,
Yeah.
and it feels really good. Although I know that it's again, it is still ongoing, but this is where I'm at now, and I feel pretty darn good about it.
Yeah, the sensation right now that feels like it's flowing through me is the way I felt when my grandma would hug me, when I would hug
Mm,
her. It's so grandma, right? Like, it's just like when you've been through it all, you've been through the many ways of letting go of your identities, of your attachments, and finding what I had to find was I was so good at being detached. I was kind of attached to being detached,
mm,
and which is it was kind of
sure.
like, it wasn't cold in any way. It was complex. Anyways, I'll leave it at that, but, you know, but
I mean, I knew exactly what you were saying. Yeah.
yeah, and I've been writing this book for this past year called The Calm Way, and had to let go of even anything that others had always identified in me. They would point to me as this calm person, this calm anchor in their life, even if I just met them at a party or something, right? People would, but I had lost all of that. And so, like, even that identity was totally gone for me. And I had to, like, in writing this book, I had to meet myself in a whole new way, right? So it's this ongoing reflection points of consciousness as we are in the now. And there's so many things along the way. We each have spent time in all these different communities. I come from, like, a long line of this sort of Buddhist studyings and Taoist, and seeing even those, right? Calling out, like, to me, the experience has been that they were hijacked. Recently, that's kind of been this awareness of even these long honored traditions are have been utterly hijacked. Um,
Yeah.
but because I was still continuing to doubt my own experience, my own inner authority through those lenses. And the reason I kind of am bringing this up is because I just really wish to send encouragement to you as you're, to everyone listening or watching this. You are just exactly right where you are, and it's okay to know what you know as true for yourself, and for you to not need to look at it as work. We can move beyond the idea of having to work for our knowing. We can just let ourselves accept that we do have wisdom, no matter what we've done or who we've been in the past, in other versions of ourselves, now's the time when we can really just lighten up and start to enjoy it. There's days when it feels pretty tumultuous, but
Yeah.
inside of that, where notice where the tumultuous feelings come from, right? Are they coming from your mind and the stories? Or are they coming from your heart? Like where are they coming from?
Yeah, the stories
Anything
always
that
come from the mind. The stories always come from the mind. All the
yeah,
heart doesn't speak, and I've, as I come into more conscious awareness of what the heart space feels like, there's never, for me, and I'm pretty sure this is just how it is. I've never heard the heart tell me a story, and moreover a story that like a spin out on, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's like I just realized that, over the past couple of days where I've had a little bit of, it hasn't been as peaceful of kind of I call it the, I call it the undercurrent of peace a lot of times, and the last couple of days have been uh I don't know, it's I don't even know how to explain it other than it's gotten felt a little bit more rocky, or it's like there's like something is
yeah,
not right. And I realized, just as you were just saying this, I'm like, just as I spoke about being realized that it's like a different level of an illusion, it was almost like I had amnesia for like a day and a half and just forgot like all of these things, not only that I know, but that I have wisdom of, having had these experiences where I came into these understandings and knowings of like how the mind works and what the mind does and how it really gets going. And for some reason, it's just literally done its thing and has just kind of come in. And I've realized that the undercurrent is exactly the same as it's always been. But my mind had started telling me some stories that built on top of stories that built on top of stories that were the
yeah,
same stories I've actually seen for a little while. And usually I just let them pass right through me. And for some reason, this hung on in there a little bit. It's like it caught, it's like there was maybe like I see it as there's a stick sticking up out of the stream, and along
yeah,
comes this thing, which is a thought, which is solid, it isn't water. It gets caught on the thing, and everything else is just streaming right by it, but I'm like, oh, that one right there, that's an important one. And I grab onto that one for whatever reason I grab onto it for. And then before I know it, a couple days later, I'm not feeling as good. And I'm not feeling as good because I just took this thing that I knew was an illusion that I let move by me basically every time it tries to go by. And for some
yeah,
reason, this time and why, I have no idea. It's not important. It was just like, oh, I caught on to it. And then I'm like in my head, just like going through whatever these, it's always something that's a story, though. It's usually fear or lack or unworthiness or all of these things, in which, thank God, I know that I am not those things, right?
yeah,
I don't attach to, oh, I am, I don't attach to I am unworthy. It's more like I do know I'm just feeling it. But it's still one of those things where somehow I just caught on to it, and then
yeah,
now it feeds down, and I'm like, oh, well, the undercurrent's exactly the same as it was. I just decided to attach to that for whatever it was I decided to attach to it for, and so now I'll just let it go.
yeah, exactly. It's like, those stories, they're like the stream of what the like sort of the record of what was happening at a moment in time when you hit your thumb, or your body had a certain experience and you were also experiencing something out here, and you've layered it in, right? You've
Yep.
interwoven it. So anytime you get a gas bubble, you parlay it into this story. You recall this story,
and
and
and, and
assume
which
that
none
it's
of it
that
has,
instead of just a gas bubble, you
yeah,
know?
and none of it has anything to do with the heart. Because I've
No.
noticed, as I'm living from the heart completely, the heart is like this constant, like radiating. I feel it as like this constant radiating field of peace.
Yeah.
It's some people call it love. I seem to sense the word that always comes to me is peace, where it's like, because peace to me is this very energetic. It's not it isn't sleepy. It's literally, the word peace stands for its own. It's like it's vibrant and awake, but it is just calm, right? It's that it's
Yeah.
and some people think calm, they associate that with napping, but I'm not. I don't see those two at all. It's like it's this constant field of like is all around you, like this whatever this field of very almost a very warm, spacious sort of feeling, and then the
Yeah.
mind is like, dude, listen to this story. Listen, it's also memory, right?
Yeah.
It's the entity into
Mhm.
memory where it's like, hey, remember this? Kristen has worked with me a lot on because she would go through the same thing where it's a memory that comes dressed up as let's go down memory lane and let's remember this thing that was really good. And a lot of times
Yeah.
that also leads you into all these other things. And it's literally just like a time stream into like a record of things that have been that have zero to do with what's going on right now. Absolutely
Exactly.
none. And it can take you for a fucking ride. And it's like before you know it, you're feeling things in your body because your body doesn't know the difference. Your body
Yeah.
doesn't know the difference between the memory or the dream or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, this is a whole different subject than what we were talking about here, but
Yeah.
it's
We'll dive into that on another podcast. I love it.
I'm good with
Um,
that.
I would love to my light is going rapidly in this room.
Like,
Let
yeah,
me
I was gonna say it still looks okay though.
Yeah, but I would really like to, wrap this up with just inviting the viewers, listeners, and us to just let's just take a minute and be in our heart, and maybe that's a feeling that you don't quite know, so I'll share how I get there. And it's very simple to my way of experiencing it. But right now, if you wanna just take a good seat, just get comfortable wherever you are, even if you're standing and listening to this. Just come into your body, come into your from the toes up to the top of your crown. Meet your body fully. Take a breath all the way down as far as you can. Let it out. And notice if there's a lot of activity up in your head, in your brain, in your mind, sort of above the neck, or if it's kind of still and relaxed. No matter what that is, in doing that and in me asking you to bring your awareness up there now, we can do the same thing and bring our awareness down into our heart, into our chest. And you can go much deeper with it than that. You can go literally into the heart, but just for now, the heart space, bring your awareness to that part. And you may notice that your face softens. You may notice that the crease in your brow eases. And that's a good thing to notice, and then bring the awareness back into your heart space. Notice your chest, your shoulders, the tension, like maybe in your trapezoids or up along the neck, in your arms. Allow everything to just drop away and feel that whole space, that whole, like there's this nice open cavity. It holds all this graciousness, this lightness. Even when we have a lot of emotional sort of experience in there, it's still very open. So just sit in there right now in that open field of your heart. Bringing your breath down into the belly, down into the hips and the pelvic region, down to the root. You might put your hands on your chest, on your heart space. Even meeting heart and lungs. Might even give a little rub, little caress to your chest. Connect with it, meet it, and know what's underneath it. And know that it's actually much bigger than what's in the body. The field of your heart spreads out for, I've heard, anywhere from 3 to 6 feet outside of you. And when you're ready, just come back in and we will say so long, farewell, until we meet again.
Aviter saying goodbye.
Oh, well, groovy.
Wiggle, wiggle.
Wiggle, wiggle. Thank you for coming and hanging out and sharing your heart and your story, your stories, the ones you've let go of and the ones you're shifting
The ones that are
even as
still
we
coming
speak.
up.
Yeah.
Skylar was just saying on one of the other video I was watching earlier with Chase, she was going up and out, up and out. She just keep doing the practice where she's letting things go up and out. I was like, God, that's perfect right now. Just let it, the thoughts up. And did you attach to a thought? Just up and out, let it go into the light of God. You know what?
Yeah. And if that doesn't work, stand at your kitchen sink an hour before you record a podcast and just start bawling and howling like
Oh,
a wolf.
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
do it for no reason, like, because you don't even know why. That's what's moving through you. Let it move through you, you know?
Hey, that is the beauty of these times right now. Just getting, Jason on the video earlier was talking about he was talking about, you know, in the space circuits now, 'cause this is really big for men. The matter circuits were huge for women. The space circuits being very big, and talking about men becoming like really vulnerable. And it's funny because that happened to me earlier this year, where like, I mean, I literally would be listening to music and just out of the middle of fucking nowhere. I mean, it's just like this emotion come up, and I am just like, I think I talked to you about this before, being on the treadmill in the gym, and I just start having tears coming down my face. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? You know what I mean? What is
You're
going on? And I'm
just
just like,
right.
yeah, I know I am, but it's like, you know, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, if I really let anybody, if people looked at me right now, they'd be like, dude, what is, like, this guy is a basket case. He was just smiling and now he's crying. And I'm just like, yeah, man. Like, and there's really no why was any of that stuff happening? I mean, I already knew better than to try to figure that. I wasn't going to figure it out anyways, but still, it's just
Yeah.
like, well, something was coming up and it made this literally emotion come through me. And it actually kind of feels good at times, even if you aren't attached to like what somebody might be looking at you from the outside. It's kind of like, whoa, like, what is this thing like moving through me? But yeah, that's just whatever the hell that is that happens now, man. Whew,
Whew.
crazy.
All right. Well, you, my friend, have a beautiful weekend. Enjoy those Christmas
Yes.
decorations, and
Oh yeah.
we'll come back again, I feel, before long.
Yes. Sounds good to me. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I would love to do this again.
Beautiful. All right. Until we meet again, friends, take care of yourselves and be gentle. Be so gentle and have a good time.
I like that.
Have-
I like that. All right.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.